So basically, Simon drew my attention to this game, which is probably actually the best example I've ever seen.
Because I found it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how Simon just knows more about this opening than I do. Actually, it's probably not amazing at all, really, is it?
I probably know more about most things, to be honest. So, yeah.
Other than the pub quiz, actually. Actually, here's a good question, quiz question.
God.
In which state was Richard Nixon born? U.S. state.
Texas?
Oh, that's the one I thought. It's actually California.
California.
Anyway,
okay. He seemed more like a Texan hardliner.
Yeah, he seems like from the south. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so basically, this is a game between Johan Hartson playing white, famous Icelandic GM who was pretty strong in the 1980s.
I think he beat Korchnoi to get into the quarter or semi-finals of the World Championship. So very strong.
Yeah,
and a young player, Vidit, who very
up and coming player. Like works a lot with Anish Giri. I think he's very good friends with Anish Giri.
Yeah.
So Anish Giri, a real expert, openings expert basically, and Vidic is really following in his footsteps. So. Yeah, this is.
Do you know who Anish Giri's favourite rapper is?
I thought you were going to say, do you know what US state Anish Giri is from? Or
no. Who's his favourite rapper? Anish Giri's.
Is it a British one?
No.
Eminem?
No. 50%.
Oh, 50%.
Sorry, Anish, love you really, but I actually think Anish is a great player. But
of course, he's a great player. Yeah,
I mean, I think he's a very exciting player. Actually, I think he's just got bad. I mean, it's fun, isn't it?
Well,
should we talk about the game
anyway? Let's go before we get too controversial. So let's quickly go through the opening.
Yeah.
And
so Bishop E2 again.
Again, Bishop E2. Black goes for this E5.
We just saw this. Okay. Now here, after King H1, I'm glad I picked this game because in the last one you mentioned King H1's a trendy move.
Absolutely, yeah. It became very popular in the 1990s. I think Kasparov, as so often, Kasparov I think popularised it. Yeah.
And here I was thinking, right, well as black, my two undeveloped pieces is really I need to get the bishop on C8.
Sure.
And my knight on B8. And as someone who's a bit of a Najdorf amateur, I'm wondering. Because my opponent's played a quiet move, can I get my bishop to a better diagonal? And I think that's what Vidit does. But also I'm wondering, does this knight ever come to C6? Or I mean, out of these two squares, which one do you generally prefer and why?
I generally like to put the knight on D7 because, as I said earlier in the video, I think it's a more flexible square and it also gives the option of bringing the rook to the C file.
Keeping the rook open.
But there's lots of lines where the knight goes to C6. Because in some variations you play bishop e6, and then you go knight c6, and then later on you go knight b4,
right, and d5,
and then you liberate with d5 that way.
Yeah.
But
it's very interesting the move that was played after King H1. I mean,
yeah, sure.
Do you want to explain this move after King H1? I mean,
black played the move b6, which is actually the main line in this position.
Okay, so why not b5?
That's the reason why black doesn't go b5 here. Well, he can play b5 actually.
Yeah.
But it's slightly riskier because now white goes a4.
So you always, another rule I would say here is b5 is the move you nearly always think about in Najdorf, but the response you've got to watch out for is a4. Because I mean, if we just, for example, if we, what you do in these positions, well, you always want to play b4. This is the rule of thumb. And I know this from the Dragdorf, that's why I'm just saying this, because I know if you ever take here, this is a horrible positional move. Because I don't know if rook takes, but let's say rook takes. This a6 pawn is a real weakness, and
that's right.
And we haven't dislodged this knight with a b pawn. And positionally speaking, this is very,
when you're playing
very bad.
b5, Simon, you have to be aware that you are creating some slight weaknesses.
Yeah.
That is possible. Another variation which is important is if black goes b4, white goes knight d5.
What if you take on e4 then?
If you take on e4, I now play the move bishop f3, and suddenly.
Can you also take on e7 and go queen d5?
Yeah, I think.
Oh no, bishop b7. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if you take immediately and go queen d5, I have bishop b7.
Bishop b7. Yeah.
But if you play bishop f3, then suddenly black has tactical problems because he's underdeveloped.
Yeah.
So he's gone for all this b5, b4, which is basically pawn moves.
Yeah.
Without developing his pieces, so he has to be slightly careful. Now if he goes f5, now this tactic works.
Yeah, because you've got to check.
and queen d5, and you're hitting the rook and the king, and you're winning material. If you play, for example, bishop f5, then I think tactically it's looking suspicious. Maybe I can go for your idea now.
Yeah.
Queen d5, and the rook, and the. Actually, could you go knight d7 here? It looks a little bit dubious. But even here, I think white's better because he can take.
So you take on a8, yeah.
He can take, and then. But there's also the possibility of. After bishop f5, there's also the possibility of white going maybe some sort of move like queen e2. Or
yeah, I mean, you can see. Okay, we don't need
to go into any detail, but
I mean, I just want to, b6 is play. Let's go to b6. Then.
Yeah, so b6 actually, you're basically the same idea.
Yeah.
So you're going to put your bishop on b7 because white's played this slow move king h1. Now you could go bishop e6 again. But I think these lines now are slightly more dangerous if I go for g4, or maybe I go f4 as well.
Okay.
Certainly bishop e6 is a playable move.
Yeah.
But they started playing b6.
Okay.
So white played f4.
Bishop b7.
Bishop b7.
And this is the whole point. Because white's played king h1, you get some attack on that e4 pawn. And we've seen a number of lines when white plays e4 and f4.
Sure.
These two moves. And we saw this in the Fischer game earlier on.
Sure.
When you play these two moves, then really one pawn that black is always aiming to attack is this one. So bishop b7 is natural. I mean, I think we have to leave it to the viewer whether you play. It's quite confusing whether you go bishop b6, e6, or you go bishop b7.
Yeah.
And then the next thing to think, it's quite confusing if you go b5 or if you go b6.
Yeah.
So
basically, you just give up. You just like, I've had enough of life.
Well, I mean, I think
it's too
complicated.
Too complicated for me.
I mean, I think as a general rule, as long as you know, if you go b5, if a4 is scaring you, then go b6. If it's not scaring you because b4 works, go b5.
Well, I think in that earlier variation, white had gone f4.
Yeah.
So if we remember, then white had gone f4 instead of king h1. Then b5 made total sense because now in this particular variation, we have this check.
And this is the important point, the tactical point, allowing bishop b7.
And allowing bishop b7 with tempo.
Yeah.
So this is quite an important point. But if we go king h1, and then
the check.
Yeah, and then we go b5, and then we do this same thing, then we have to sort of lose this move of rook a7. This is actually a playable position for black anyway, actually, funny enough.
Yeah.
There's actually a game, if you look up, Kasparov was playing black against Short and he won. Okay. I think white is supposed to be better here somehow. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Simon. There's a lot of subtleties in the open.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to discuss them here because I think the general viewer, we're not doing defined theory. We're going to do a little bit at the end, but we're trying to teach you the opening through general ideas.
Absolutely.
So I think...
Because I think that's much easier to remember rather than just throwing loads and loads of theory at you that you'll forget in 2 weeks, or I would.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, I think questions like this, when do you go b6, when do you go b5, I think it's why we're spending a little bit more time. But I mean, let's have a look at the way the game went. So I mean, here, black does put, of course, the knight on d7 because this keeps the bishop free. And I think it's easy to see why the knight goes to that square here. Queen e2, and now after queen e2, this is what I think is interesting. So let's just put another move on the board there. After this move, now black plays b5, and I can already see why it might look like black's lost the tempo, but in actual fact, this move is now a good move because black has developed his pieces. You don't have the same. If a4, for example, now b4 is going to work so much better because we get what we talked about earlier. Knight d5, we can take the knight off, and you've mentioned this before, Danny. When you take the knight, and white has to take back the pawn, so let's just show that.
Would we take the knight or the bishop?
I'm not sure. Maybe the knight because just to cover c6 and but I mean this kind of thing. This white pawn moving to d5 as a general rule, we're very happy to see this.
It stops a lot of his play. It stops a lot of his play, down the d file and stuff, and really, unless you can get a knight to a5 quickly, doesn't. I mean, a good move here actually, I think for black might even be the move a5 himself,
just to stop and threaten bishop a6,
which permanently stops the idea of knight a5, and as you say, is giving black even more freedom.
I think black's doing very well here, but with the rook, the
absolutely,
e file.
Simon.
So this is why this is different, and again, this shows you the subtleties of how black's playing this very cleverly. I think this is a good example.
Yeah, because I think that's a good example as well. That you evaluate each position on its merits. Just because you played b6 earlier, you're not concerned about This is one of the things. I mean, like Vidic is a good example of a player from the computer generation. Computer generation, they don't care about generalization too much. They don't care about, they don't care about ghosts. They're not worried about ghosts. They're purely thinking about, is that the correct move in this position? Which is a way.
So basically, you're saying every position is unique in a way. You've got to look. Just find the best move in each position. And here, B5 is good because you're getting your counterplay on the queen side. I like it. Okay, so let's have a look. This is still very interesting. So we'll go through it. I mean,
White played the move A3,
stopping B4, and now of course Rook C8.
Rook C8,
all very thematic. F5, I think, is quite thematic. Now the next move I really like. This reminds me of Gary Kasparov idea. But I'll let you explain the next move for black, Rook E8.
Well, I mean, just to stop you there, Simon. I would even be tempted here about an exchange sacrifice. We were talking about the exchange sacrifice. Yeah, okay.
And even when White's king is on the king side.
Even when the king is on the king side, because I mean, if I was playing this in a blitz game, I'd probably go Rook C3 without him thinking.
And what's the follow up after takes?
Well, if you take, then maybe I go Queen C7, and I've got long term play, or Queen A8 is another move.
Or Queen A8, yeah, okay, and then Rook C8.
So if you go Rook E1, then maybe I follow up with Rook C8.
And you want to go, okay, this is interesting.
This is playable for black. I'm not saying it's the best continuation, sure. But this is playable. I mean, maybe you go Knight A5.
Or A4 might be a bit scary, but okay. I mean, like, I agree, it's playable, but let's.
But I like absolutely. Black doesn't have to panic it because he's always got the idea in the position. He goes Rook E8.
So why has he played that weird move? Because there's loads of pieces in the way of that Rook and everything else. Why has he done that, Danny?
Well, I think he's essentially gearing up for his following idea, which is this liberating pawn break.
D5.
And the Rook on E8 has a lot of long-term potential. Yeah.
I mean, let's just show it. So G4, and now we see this really lovely idea.
Again, I'd be tempted to take, but he finds an even better idea.
D5 again. D5. And just to reiterate with like the Satoshi game as well. When White has played F5, when White has moved these two pawns, this D5 move becomes a lot stronger, mainly because of the reason that when things open up, and they will open up, whose king is going to be weaker? Well, the White king, because it hasn't got its pawns guarding it. So, absolutely. So I think this becomes a lot stronger, and just give up the pawn. But what I like about this, Danny, is White takes the pawn, because otherwise you're going to bust it on E4 now.
Sure.
The bishop is very good here. And I love this next move. The offer of a double sack, E4. I mean, this now, look at that baby.
The only good thing about White's position is the fact he hasn't played H4 like in that Satoshi game. If he played H4, we'd have moves H4, H6.
Yeah.
He'd probably be busted already. But here, he's got some chance. I mean, I was just wondering if he could take with a knight on D5, Simon, but what would you do then?
Well, I can go knight takes and knight F6 for one idea. That's a very quick idea, just to try to win that pawn back. Or
can you even maybe
go E4 is very double, the double sack again.
If you take with a bishop, I'm probably going to chuck this move at you.
I like it. Queen is even coming to H4. Rook takes D5. Knight F6. This is beautiful. I mean, it's two pawns.
Oh la la!
But look how the black pieces are coordinating here. Yeah. You're pinning the bishop.
It's all about the potential of the pieces.
Those pieces. I mean, let's show with arrows where they can move to.
The knight's coming to F6. Yeah, the rook is coming to C4. Queen is coming to H4.
Oh, it's lovely. And there's a lovely line here. If Queen to G2. Can't we just go thank you very much?
Yeah.
And then Queen takes and Knight F6. So I'm getting carried away here. I'm really enjoying this. The Queen moves somewhere, and then look at this. I mean, this is like party time with these babies. I mean, okay, I'm giving up a lot of material, but you can see.
Well, even here, I'd much rather be black here. I'm sure this is probably winning.
I mean, we can win the exchange back straight away.
Rook C4 is a good move here.
Rook C4 coming. I mean, we're both getting very excited about black's position. Yeah. As the guy in Hangover would say. Well, I won't do the thing. The little, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so very nice idea, and this is a really nice example. And this game, just to let everyone know, was quite a recent game. It's only played in the last couple of years.
Yeah. So this E4, this D5 line is still very relevant now. It is. So we just show them the next few moves.
Yeah.
Quickly. So clearly, black has a good position here. Even if he's losing a pawn, then his pieces are so active.
Yeah.
White could take on e4. In fact, he does.
He does take.
But then black is getting this very active position.
Yeah, and let's just show how they, because people still might be thinking, hang on a minute, is this really enough? But just show the moves, because all
again, if you take with a bishop, then I'm dropping this move on you.
Yeah,
and
I'm loving, even stronger.
I'm loving this queen h4 idea as well.
There's too many good moves there.
There's knight f6 actually might be rather nasty.
Yeah, there's too much there.
Yeah, or even knight c3.
There's too much. There's too much.
Yeah.
So let's just have a look how the game very quickly ended. After 20, queen takes e4. I think the only move.
Yeah, black played bishop d6. Again, very nice idea.
Queen has to move.
Very simple chess. We're just going to go queen h4.
Threatening checkmate.
I know about you, Simon. Well, I do know about you, but I like games where you just got simple moves to play. Just threaten checkmate.
Look at this next move, Danny. You're threatening checkmate on h2, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
So white defends it with this move, and look at this. This is a put it in your pipe and smoke it, baby.
That's a star move, yeah.
Opening up the bishop, and here, if white takes this, we've simply got something like this, and now the back rank is weak, and this is checkmate. It's a lovely move. And show us the end after knight b4.
So knight b4. Again, if white goes here, then we take on f3.
It's the same.
You can't take with the queen because you're basically overloaded.
Yeah,
that's the main point.
Yeah.
So white went for desperation tactics, bishop g5, but didn't help him. Black simply he decided to cash in on the material now.
Yeah.
And just win the in game with rook e2. So threatening rook takes h2. Winning the bishop, also threatening rook b2.
Lovely game.
So that was the end of the game. Very nice game. Yeah. Just a very simple example of why d5 can be such a powerful device for black.
Agreed.
In so many of those positions.
I also like this clever b6 idea. So a couple of things to take away from this game: when you play your bishop to e6, when you play it to b7, and when you play b5, when you play b6. And if your opponent, if white does overextend himself on the king side by pushing his pawns,
he has to bear in mind.
Look out for d5.
Look out for d5.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
What's next on the menu, Danny?
I think we'll look at. I'll tell you what, we'll look at examples of where black is going for actually a queenside, all-out queenside attack.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Let's go then.
Yeah. Okay.